Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and welcome to the Shaman's Cave.
And I'm Renee Baribeau, the practical shaman. And we're really excited to present this important topic about mental exhaustion. And Sandra keeps the list of our talks. I do the background stuff, and she does the talk keeping and writes the descriptions and things like that. We share work very easily, and I think maybe that's why we haven't gotten exhausted with the show.
Right. Yeah, it's
But
true.
But it's hard not to be tired, mentally burnt out on this world spin that we're involved in right now. And I know for me recently that it's time to write a book. And I said to the editor, and I said, she goes like, "Are we gonna have a meeting about this?" And they're like, "No, I'm tired right now." And and I love going back with Sandra. She said, like, "Yeah, the book will write itself when you're ready, but if you don't clear the mental exhaustion, you are just deepening the hole." So
Yeah, for me, I found that I was involved in uh, so many different dramas about a few weeks ago that I got so mentally exhausted that I decided I couldn't deal with any of them. And I just let them go. I mean, I really and I've never ever in my life I'm 72 years old, and this is the very first time this has ever happened. And trust me, I have been mentally exhausted before, but I got to a place where it was like, "Nope, I can't deal with one more drama. I'm just shutting my brain off, I'm shutting my life off, and everybody can take care of themselves, and that's it." And I'm finding, I do read the New York Times headlines. I'm not real big on reading the news, but I feel as a teacher and as a practitioner who works with clients, I have to know what people are dealing with. It's really important to know to keep up if you're a teacher or a practitioner with what these times are triggering in people. And so I do force myself to not cut off completely and to know a bit of what's going on. So I know what people are going through. And so I just read the Times headlines and I cannot believe how many articles are being written about mental exhaustion. There are a ton of articles and it's every day. Um, and so I was dealing with a person who was mentally exhausted, and she said, "Oh, I can think of all these things that I can do, but I'm not going to do one of them." And I thought about that because I was in that same exact place a while back. It was a few months ago. I'm not there anymore. And what I did was, I like to paint, but I don't paint watercolors, but I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna try doing a watercolor painting." So what I did is I bought a few watercolors, I have brushes, and I bought, paper, and I just put a piece of paper on a table that I pass by a lot, and I just put paints down there, and I filled up a glass of water, and I put a brush in there. And I just walked by it every day. I mean, every day. And one day, I finally picked up the brush, I put it in the water, and I dipped it in the paint, and I just made one stroke on the paper, one stroke, and walked away. And then I found that every day I came back and started doing more and more strokes until I actually had a painting. And somebody else shared, that she was in the same place that a lot of us are at, and she did the same thing, and she ended up doing a one-woman show in a gallery. And so, the point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes we can get so mentally exhausted that even thinking about reading a line in an inspirational book or making one stroke with paint, or pulling an oracle card from Renee's wind oracle deck is just too much. It's that's how mentally exhausted some people are. And it is going step by step.
Mm,
It's maybe picking a card and not turning it over.
I love that.
And one day doing it. Um, and so that's where we're at right now. It's the simplest things
Mm.
can be so overwhelming when you're that mentally exhausted, and people are allowing themselves to get into that place right now.
That's funny you say that. Last month in the Oracle Circle, I had everyone pull a card, but I told them not to pull it over, and I had them feel into it and see what it was telling them, not with the information on the one side, but just as a thing right on that side. So that's kind of like a little bit of a so when you called that out, I was like, "Wow, that's interesting." That maybe I was thinking that we didn't have to know more information, but a little less information and see how it actually felt for us.
Yeah, but if you're really mentally exhausted, that practice is way too much. Way too.
Mm.
I'm talking about people who can't even turn the card over.
Wow.
So
So
what kind of would you say to them?
what would I say to the person who can't turn the card over? Don't. You know, one thing that I've learned, I did that talk at the conference recently about burnout and mental fatigue, and there was a woman on the panel. They actually have a treatment now at a mental health center for people with autoimmune disease and these other disease. This is kind of like um, heading towards a disorder. When we don't take small steps for our mental exhaustion, they lead to health crises. They lead to bigger mental disorders because when I was 30, I don't know why I'm going back to 30 again, but when I was cooking 14 hours a day and my dad died, I was so drained and I didn't give myself room for that exhaustion of what a death or an experience of that level caused in my life. And it led me to being burnt out. And if anyone's in this listening's been burnt out, that takes years to heal. Whereas being mentally exhausted and treating yourself and nurturing yourself and giving yourself self-care, whether it's a week, a month, I mean, because as you always say, this world is billions of years old. A year is nothing to wait. You know, like we just think, oh my God, I didn't do anything last year. Well, I was healing my mental exhaustion, and that's a lot. So, if you think about a day of shopping, healing yourself from being overstimulated and mentally beyond what's feeling like repair at the moment, doing nothing is sometimes the best answer.
Yeah, and it could be more than, doing nothing. I oftentimes find that if I'm mentally exhausted, doing nothing can create more mental exhaustion for me, because then my mind has the opportunity to, loop. So, again, as Renee and we're always if we can almost say the focus of our show is hanging out in nature, because basically, if you listen to everyone at the Shaman's Cave, everyone in the Shaman's Cave, in 7 years always takes you back to nature, every single show. And so that's where we can get some really, really deep healing, and just lying on the ground. I know somebody who had a stroke and full stroke, and instead of doing regular treatment, he lied on the ground for a year and he completely healed, every single symptom, and he didn't see a doctor, he didn't take medication, that's all he did. I know I've had students who had cancer who, went out into nature and lived in nature in a tent until they healed. That was way before all the homelessness and people living in tense now, we're going back over 20, 30 years, how many people have healed by lying down in nature. I went, I had a really surprising thing. I was so mentally exhausted. Wits and I went to a place on the river where we really like to go. And just spontaneously, I always stand in the water at the river, but for some reason, spontaneously, I stood in the water for over 20 minutes. Um, and the next day I woke up, and for the first time in years, I didn't have any inflammation or pain in my entire body. It was amazing to me. Um, so, nature is always a healing force. And if we're too mentally exhausted to take a hike or anything, there's always a way to find a way to sit outside with your feet on the ground, to go outside and greet the sun, um, and come back to yourself and feel a little bit of life force filling yourself back up again.
Absolutely. And to do it incrementally, when you were talking about the person who laid on the earth, a, a couple of weeks ago when I got up here to Whidbey, it was after a long haul of books and conferences. I found myself just lying out on the grass. And just like I just naturally went out there and lied down and stayed there. And I thought, like, well, this is an interesting perspective because it does. We talked earlier in a recent show about changing your perspective. Nothing like lying on the lawn to change your perspective. So that worked for me. And then, I love to take long walks, but I haven't been able to do that. So I thought, like, well, I could take a little walk. And so I started by just going to visit a neighbor 2 houses over.
Mhm.
Then the next day I walked around the whole block. Then the next day I walked down the hill because it's just incrementally building up the reserve of feeling better to do something again.
Yeah, I think I love what you said, Renee, because it's really about increments. And that's the point, is that I think people start to feel guilty that they're too exhausted to do anything, and they should be doing something. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas, that we all still live with. And it really is, we're really at the place, we're in a new time in our lives, for most of us, not all of us, where there's so much going on and there's so much taking us down that we have to start learning how to heal in increments. And I really love that you brought that up.
And those shoulda, coulda, would haves is a chapter in my book, A Pilgrim's Guide to Walking Wisdom, because sometimes mental exhaustion requires a pilgrimage. Like that there's a place where like, am I too exhausted to do anything? But or should I use my exhaustion to take a long walk? And I took last year when I took a long walk about 120 miles on the Camino, was so exhausted when I started, and yet it filled me up in ways that I didn't even know I could be filled up because I totally removed myself out of the situation I was in, put myself in a total foreign situation. So it's new things coming in. And then my goal was to go from one end to the next. I didn't have to think about anything else but which yellow arrow to follow. And so sometimes doing something different and still challenging ourselves is a viable way to go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe there's I really understand when people say I can't take that first step. I've been there. I've absolutely been there. But uh, right now, if you can't take that first step, it's over. It really is. Because nobody's going to carry you to another place. That's not possible anymore. We're all doing our own work and we can't carry anybody anymore. There's nobody who can carry you, no matter what teacher makes promises that they can make your life better for you. Nobody can carry you except you. And so you have to make a decision. I'm taking the year off. I'm gonna do things in increments. I'm gonna go on a pilgrimage, but you really do have to find that place inside of yourself, of what is what would I need, and just follow that and really trust that you'll heal if you're willing to set the intention that you're taking care of yourself right now and that that's the choice that you're making.
That's such a good point. Many years ago, I went to the Vermont Studio Center to paint for a month, and they give you a studio. And I remember walking into the studio, and it was a big studio with all these barren walls. And I got there just as tired as I get most places, and I'm there like, "Well," like this expectation that I was gonna fill up all of these walls. So instead, I was like the odd student out, or the odd, studio tender out. I went kayaking, and I went for a hike in the woods. And then after a few days of just being there with again, it's with nature, I started to paint. And by the end of 30 days, I had 10 large canvases on filling up the walls. But if you had asked me that first day when I walked into that big empty room, how is this going to happen? I would never have known.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it really is about, caring about yourself enough, to take that first step,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Even if it's just laying down, um, that's fine. But what is that first step that you need to do to, heal at a mental exhaustion, and finding that place inside of yourself that, um, is willing to at least take a first step? Because really nobody can help you take that first step. Nobody can drag you to take that first step. You have to find that place inside of yourself where your life force is still burning bright. All of our until we die, our life forces are burning really bright. We dim them. We make that choice to dim them. So what if you made a choice not to dim your life force and let your life force start to heal you?
Mm, I like that. And it does. When you allow it, it does. Well, why don't that would be how about if we give you a first step? Maybe you come over to the Shaman's Cave Facebook page and put on the first step that you're going to take just to renourish your brain and renourish your soul and renourish that first step.
Yeah, people are looking for ideas right now. A lot of people are, I always found this in my life, in teaching, that people think the word create means to be a famous dancer, a famous painter, a famous actor, uh, a famous sculptor. It's all about fame. Create means fame in our culture. And creating a moment where you can lie down is creating. Creating has nothing to do with fame, nothing. It has to do with, uh, designing, something for yourself that you're going to do. You create a way to take care of yourself, and it has nothing to do with becoming famous. It has to do with tapping into your life force and knowing that your life force can help you take that first step, can help you walk over to a neighbor's house. It's your life force that does that. It's not you that does that. It's just dropping into your life force and allowing it to move you, in ways, until you feel better.
One thing that I'll say about that, but when you get to the neighbors, the life force meets you and it multiplies. So just by taking an action, the universe will always give you a counter reaction, and generally, for me, I have found that to be a positive force of movement, like, in AA, they always say if you need to, talk to somebody, pick up the heavy phone, and I'll never forget one time I picked up that phone, it was so heavy to pick it up and call somebody else, and it turned out the woman I called needed me more than I needed her, and in that moment, it changed for me too.
Yeah, yeah, connection with others, really it really does help with that mental exhaustion. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, it gave me hope for another day. So sometimes we just need hope for another minute, hope for another half a day, hope for a day, and it's there, but it's just taking that baby step.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for anybody else. You're doing it for you. And that's what we really need to be doing right now because we're living in a world where nobody's taking care of us. So you really have to take care of yourself at this particular point. Yeah. And the simple steps, create um uh get you up the mountain faster. I really found that when I was a firefighter for the fire service, I walked so slow. Nobody has any idea how slow I walk. And we'd have to wear these packs and go up and to the top of these mountains. And I was the always first person up to the top because walked so slow, but I walked so slow I never stopped. Where people walk so fast, they had to take these really long breaks. And I never took a break because I walked so slow. I always made it to the top first. And so I really learned that was such a powerful lesson for me about the power of just taking the smallest steps and
Mhm.
how it will take you to where you want to go, even if it's a mountain that you don't think you can possibly get up with the weight that you're carrying.
Oh, that's a great story. I don't think I've ever heard about your fire tending days before.
Yeah, I write about it in all my books. It was a powerful time in my life, yeah.
Yeah, and the Quechua people in Peru taught me that lesson too. It's like they live at 14,000 to 18,000 feet, and they say, "You just keep walking, Renee. You just keep walking, and just don't stop." So, but
Yeah,
up that too.
I was reading, I was either watching a video or reading, something about, the Navajo people and how their elders actually live on the top floor, so they keep walking.
Mm. I live on the top floor, and I always think, "Okay, I'm doing this so I can stay in shape
Right.
for the view and to stay in shape." But, when I do running up and down the stairs, it does revitalize me, and it does help for that. So, little things, just as the little things we need to do today.
That's right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so we hope that we gave you some ideas, and we hope that you'll share some of your ideas. What do you do to get out of mental exhaustion? What are the small steps that you take when you feel really mentally exhausted? So let's inspire each other and let's share different ways because that's where so many of us in the collective are right now, and, this is a new time, so we have to share new ways of how do we nurture ourselves, during the crazy times that we're living right now.
Thank you, and we'll see you again, and make sure to follow us and tell your friends about our show.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and we love you, and we're with you, and we're walking the path with you. So blessings, everyone.
Blessings.